and give me 25. I'm the gunny.
It's time for the gunny.
The quarter deck. Lights. Get online right now. You got 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Hello, my bunch of knuckle-dragging, beer-drinking, hard-charging devil dogs. You're listening to The Quarter Deck. I am your host, Miguel, the Gunny Signs.
Get off the bus!
I do solemnly swear. That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. You're listening to The Quarter Deck with Gunny Signs. This week on The Quarter Deck, we will continue our discussion with VA benefits, and this week we're going to go ahead and get started in talking about disability compensation, which is a huge benefit that so many veterans or service members really have no idea on how to apply for, and we'll discuss that today. Our reading of our book, No Greater Friend and No Worst Enemy, has started to get a little bit more interesting. Now, the 1st Marine Division, where we left off, they were dealing with nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare training that they were preparing in the event that they had to be in complete MOPP gear once they headed into the country of Iraq. As a reminder, our podcast is now available on all podcasting applications from Apple, Spotify, Google, Podbean. Whatever your desire is, you can listen to our podcast there. You can simply do a Google search on our podcast. And remember that you can visit us on our website, on our Facebook page at The Quarter Deck with Gunny Signs. The Quarter Deck. If you're just joining us, you're listening to The Quarter Deck, and I am Miguel, the Gunny Signs, and welcome to another week of our discussion about VA benefits. Now, this week we're going to get started on talking about VA disability compensation, or in other words, how the heck do you file for a disability compensation claim? Now, for me, this has been always a topic that I've had with veterans, with active duty service members regarding applying for this benefit, because the answer that I always get is, oh, I just haven't got to it because it's so hard to apply for it. I don't even want to do it. It's going to get denied anyway. Why should I even apply? Now, like we discussed before, the purpose of you applying is so you can actually find out whether you're going to be eligible for this benefit or not. Now, look at it this way. What is VA disability compensation? VA disability compensation is something that you receive because of any kind of injury or anything that might have occurred while you were on active duty, that you can get compensation for that. And the big thing about that is that this compensation that you could receive is exempt from taxes. So you don't pay taxes on any type of disability compensation that you may receive. So it's going to be beneficial for you, especially as a source of income that you're going to be able to receive now that you're out of the service because of anything that might have occurred to you while you were in active duty. The main thing is that, especially with filing a disability claim, one question that I always get from people is, oh, I've been out for 15 years. There's no way that I can apply for disability compensation. There is absolutely no time frame for you to submit a disability claim. Now, one thing that I always tell service members that are about to get out, they have the ability to actually submit their disability claim up to 6 months out before they get out of the service. So this way, the VA will have enough time to conduct all of the appointments or anything that they may need to do before they get out of the service. That is also known as a BDD claim, or a benefits delivery at discharge claim. Now, with this claim, what the active duty service member is going to be able to do is submit all the evidence, submit everything that they have that's going to support the claim that they're doing. All that's going to be submitted to the VA, and then the VA is going to go ahead and schedule all the appointments for them. Now, within 6 months is the key time frame, but they can do it up to between 90 days all the way up to 60 days that they can do that. Anything below that 61-day time frame is not going to be eligible to do the BDD claim. And it's a very beneficial way to do that because it's going to allow them to have everything done before they're even out of the service. And then all they have to do is once they get out of the service and they're officially a veteran, the claim will be processed. So it's going to be a lot faster turnaround for them to actually submit that, for them to actually do that. Now, the other option is for the individual to do a fully developed claim. That's anything 60 days or less from them getting out of the service. Now, honestly, is there a huge difference in the way these claims are handled? Not really. The only big difference is that the service member is not going to have enough time to conduct all the appointments before they get out of the service because the VA is just simply not going to have enough time for them to actually do all these appointments before they get out. So these individuals will not have any appointments until they're actually out of the service. Now, when I mean their last day of service, okay, what I mean by that is that a lot of individuals, when they're on active duty, they leave early, okay? They leave early on leave before they get out of the service. And during that time, you are still considered to be active duty. You're not out of the service yet. So until the last official day that you are in active duty. So whenever that terminal leave, that last leave period that you can possibly take is over, the day after that, that is when the claim is going to start getting processed. And that is the same with a fully developed claim and a BDD claim. The only difference is with the two, like I said, is that with a fully developed claim, none of your appointments are going to actually be able to be done until you are officially out of the service. The first thing you got to do is you got to make sure that you have your evidence put together. Now, what do I mean by evidence? The whole time that you are on active duty, you happen to go to medical for anything. You know, maybe you broke a leg, you did stuff like that or anything, and you have to have the documentation to actually prove that stuff, to make sure that the VA can see that without a shadow of a doubt that yes, this happened while they were on active duty. So that's how they're going to determine that stuff. And one of the main things, especially for active duty service members, now I'm only speaking for the Marine Corps because I am a retired United States Marine, so I'm only going to speak on our behalf. But as far as back in when I first came into the service back in 1995, it was frowned upon for you as a Marine to go to medical because people would just say that you were going down there to get away from being on work. You were always told to suck it up, to drink water, take Motrin, change your socks, and get your butt back to work. That was the main thing that was being told to everybody. So nobody went to medical, you know, myself included. When I was on active duty, I never went to medical because I did not want to be the one that was always at medical or got put on light duty or anything like that. And looking back at it, was that the right thing to do? Hell no, it wasn't. It wasn't the right thing to do because now all that documentation and everything that you're going to need in order for you to actually prove that all these things happened to you is not there. It's not going to be available for you to submit to the VA to show that these things happen. So my recommendation is go to medical. Get things documented in your medical records so this way you have the proof, you have the evidence to be able to submit that to the VA to get your claim in. Now, I'm not saying to go to medical and just, go there and tell, oh, this hurts and that hurts. No. If there's something legitimately wrong, you need to go get seen for that. Especially the big things, joints, back, shoulders, knees. Those huge things like that are huge. Because if you think about it, what's going to happen the older that you get, the more the years go by, there may be something that happened while you were in active duty that, that you've aggravated while you were in active duty service. But hey, it got better. So whatever, I'm good. It got better. What's going to happen when you get older? Will that situation possibly get worse or is it going to get better? Most of the time, the answer that I always get is that it's going to get worse. And I'm here to tell you from my own experience. Now, again, this is my own experience. Things get worse when you get out of the service. We're so used to being on active duty service and self-medicating ourselves and taking Motrin, whatever, Tylenol, just to kind of suppress the pain and the aches that we have, just so we can continue on with our mission and do whatever we have to do throughout the day. We do that all the time, and it's not the right thing to do, you know, but unfortunately that's just the way that individuals are brought up, and that's the way that they deal with that. So that main thing is going to be that evidence that you want to make sure that you have it, because you want to make sure that you have everything that you're going to need to file that claim. Now, once you file that claim, you're going to get the form ready and all that, and you get all the evidence put together. Now you're going to have to see, because the VA is going to determine, you know, if it is a service-connected condition, they're going to break that down. They're going to break it down into some categories to make sure that, yes, it is a disability, and that you're going to be eligible for you to get compensation for that. With the compensation, they rate you from 0% all the way up to 100% in 10% in intervals. That's what they rate you at. You start receiving compensation at the 10% level. Now, a lot of people tell me, well, if I'm going to get a 0, who cares? I'm not going to get any money. Well, why even apply? One thing that you got to understand is it's not about the money. Yes, the money's nice. Don't get me wrong. It's nice to get money for you for things that you did. And but even if you're rated at a 0%, it's already service connected. So what does that mean to you? That means that later on in the future, if things happen to get worse, now you can resubmit a claim for an increase to the rating that you may have, where you didn't get any compensation for. And now later, you're able to actually get that compensation. Okay, so now, you know, so again, let's go back to the 4 categories on how the VA is actually going to actually determine what kind of service-connected condition that you actually have. Now, let's take a look at these 4 categories that we've been talking about. The first one is direct. That means that this disability directly happened because of something that occurred while you were on active duty. That is how they'll determine that to be a direct service-connected condition. Next, we have secondary. Now, a secondary condition is something that happened because of a condition that you already have that is service-connected. For example, let's take a look at it this way. Let's say that you have a service-connected condition that is already rated for your right knee. So it's already rated. You have a service-connected condition for that. 5-6 years down the road. Now your left knee and possibly your hips are starting to get bad because they're overcompensating for what your right knee hasn't been able to do. Now you are eligible to actually be able to submit a new claim and put that disability as a secondary condition to your right knee. And now the VA is going to take a look at that to determine if that is the case, and that can be considered a secondary service-connected condition. So that is why it is so important to get things documented, even if it's a 0%. Because if it's a 0%, not only can you get an increase if that happens to get worse, but what if something else is starting to get worse because of that condition? So in the long run, it's going to help out, you know, the veteran or the service member. The next one is a presumptive service-connected condition. The best way for me to explain this is that everybody has heard of the water contamination down there in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. There was water contamination a long time ago, and a lot of veterans that were there during that time have developed cancer or other diseases because of that water contamination. Now, because that service member was actually there during that time, the VA will take a look at those conditions and say, yes, they were there. So now the VA is going to consider that to be a presumptive service-connected condition because the individuals were actually there during that time frame. And because of that, this is the cause that is happening now, and therefore it is a service-connected condition because of that. So that is how the presumptive one works. Last is aggravated. Now, an aggravated condition, it's, let's say that there was something that occurred prior to you coming into the active duty service. The injury was there. It was documented at the MEP station, but you were cleared. You say, hey, you're good to go. It's not going to be an issue. It's not going to affect the individual from going into active duty service. Now, a couple years go down. You've been in active duty for 2, 3, 4 years, however long you've been in the service. It has started now to get worse. It has been aggravated because of the things that you have done while you were in active duty. So therefore, the VA will consider that to be an aggravated service-connected condition. So those are the 4 ways that the VA is going to look at this. So you can see there's different ways that they're going to be able to determine whether you have a service-connected condition or not. So it's very important to get that documentation and put it in. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about how and what actually is a disability rating. A disability rating is something that the VA is going to assign to you that is based on the severity of your disability. You know, that it's going to express the rating that you're going to get. You know, how severe is it? That's how they're going to determine the rating. And how is that determined? It's determined by the evidence that you give the VA. The results from your VA claim examiner. So whenever you go to those VA appointments, that whatever they determine, that's going to be. Any other sources that you may have or that the VA can get of conditions that are going on, they'll be able to determine that. Now, if you have more than one disability, of course, you can put that stuff in there. You can claim whatever you want to claim, actually. You put it in there. They'll make the final determination in order for them to decide whether it's a service-connected condition or it's not, to make sure that you get the proper rating that you're going to get. So that's going to be very, very important for them to actually do that stuff. Now, with the disability compensation, we talked about that they rated from 10% to 100%. And what that is, it is a monthly stipend that you're going to receive every single month because of those disabilities that you received while you were in the military service. Tax-free, it's going to be coming to you. Okay. And remember, that's at least if you're rated at 10% or higher, that you'll receive some kind of compensation for that. Okay. And as the years go by, can the VA increase or decrease your compensation? Yes, they can, depending on certain situations. They can increase it if things happen to get worse. Now, as well, if you start to get better and all that stuff and everything, and that disability is no longer affecting you, it could be a possibility that they can decrease it as well. But that's also going to depend on the individual, whether they're continuing to get follow-up care through the VA healthcare for those conditions that they get. Okay, so that's how they're going to do that stuff and everything to make sure that they have it and all that stuff and everything is there and it's ready to go. So it's very simple to determine that stuff. And so that is what disability compensation is. It is basically a stipend that you're going to receive every single month, basically for the rest of your life, and it's going to be tax-free. So, I mean, who doesn't really like to have additional income for whatever reason they may need it for? And it's there. And it's always good to have that additional stuff that's just there in case you may need it. You may not need it. Who knows? But it's there. Put it in savings, do whatever you want to do with that stuff, and it'll be there for you to make sure that you have that. And remember that depending on your disability rating, that can also connect you to some of the other benefits that are there. We talked about some of the survivors benefits, education benefits last week. Depending on your rating, if you're considered to be 100% permanently and totally disabled, your dependents can qualify for the education benefit for them to be able to go to school. So we can see that it is an important thing for you to do to understand how to file for disability compensation. We're going to stop there this week talking about that. And next week, we'll go ahead and pick up on the actual process on how to actually apply for your disability compensation. The Quarter Deck is brought to you by Miguel Science Photography. From the beginning of your family to the first birthday and beyond. Whether it's a retirement or a Marine Corps ball, Miguel Science Photography is there to make memories that will last a lifetime. Miguel Science Photography is a certified veteran-owned business. Contact them at miguelsciencephotography.com.
What we're going to do right here is go back. Way back into time.
So much information regarding the VA. But let's move into our next topic and talk about the 1st Marine Division and how they're progressing into their preparation into heading to Iraq by reading our next chapter of our book, No Better Friend, No Worst Enemy. Now, last week we left off with the division starting to prepare to get ready regarding the nuclear, biological, chemical warfare that they expect for Saddam Hussein to be using against the military once they go into the country of Iraq. So they did that by preparing, by doing a lot of training exercises out in 29 Palms and in the Yuma Proving Grounds in desert terrain that resembled the same kind of terrain that they were going to be put in front of once they actually went into the country of Iraq. This week, we're going to go ahead and get into talking about the 1st Reconnaissance Battalion and how they trained for a new mission that they were going to be put in front of. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into talking about what the 1st Reconnaissance Battalion was going to be able to be doing and how they were going to prepare for this. With the arrival of the new CG came a new concept of employment for the division's Reconnaissance Battalion. The battalion had focused its training prior to its time on team operations, operating as the division's eyes and ears near the limits of the indirect fire range, and observing key named areas of interest, or NAIs. Over the year prior, the division had worked to integrate the reconnaissance teams into the division's deep fight, inserting small teams to observe enemy artillery and troop concentrations so long-range fires could be brought to bear decisively against these targets. The Iraqi battle space was not conducive in this scheme of reconnaissance, and a new concept was developed. The CG's vision was to use reconnaissance as an independent maneuver element, providing reconnaissance in force and direct action capabilities on the flanks of the division. One particular mission for the battalion would be to set up a picket line in the east of the division, protecting the division's flank as it moved up Highway 7. There were some significant changes in store for the reconnaissance battalion as they adjusted to the shift in employment strategy. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Ferrando shifted his battalion into high gear in preparation for the new missions. The battalion began to re-equip, including armored vehicles, Humvees, heavy guns, and vehicle weapon mounts. Recon Battalion revamped its training plan to include heavy weapons. New communication systems were required to support battalion operations. VHF had not been a priority for the Battalion S6, but now they needed to support a number of new battalion nets. VSAT cards for long-haul data communications were also integrated. The battalion's command and control mechanisms underwent some changes as well. According to Lieutenant Colonel Ferrando, I just pointed them in the right directions and those guys always made it happen. Now, as far as planning for rotary wing aviation support, 3rd MAW started doing this and training in this mission. At no point during the simulations buildup of the deployment did 3rd MAW fail to be an active part of the solution of the division's challenges. The responsive support provided by 3rd MAW was instrumental in everything from unmanned aerial vehicles or UAVs, employment to casualty evacuation planning, Marine Air Ground 16, 29, and 39 provided most of the division's rotary wing support. MAG 16 and MAG 29 were planned to provide support from the decks of the amphibious ships, while MAG 39 was support from Ali Al Assam airfield in Kuwait. Mission analysis determined that each division's CP and each RCT would require a minimum of 1 UH-1 for command and control support, preferably 2. In addition, each RCT would require ready CASEVAC capabilities in the form of 2 CH-46 Echoes. These assets would be in direct support of the RCTs and would be co-located with each regimental CP. With guidance from the CG and through the OPT process, it was determined that a habitual relationship between RCTs and squadrons in direct support was essential for mission success. Squadrons V'd for the RCT they would support. MAC 39 squadrons were assigned to MLA 267 supporting RCT 1. along with HMM 364, HMLA 169, and HMM 268 supported RCT 5. HMLA 169 and HMM 364 supported RCT 7. Division General support was provided by HMLA 269 from MAG 29. During the planning phase, the CG's guidance, speed equals success, drove the logistics preparation for combat. The division's logistics team, headed by Lieutenant Colonel John Broadmeadow, was up to the challenges of supporting the aggressive scheme of maneuver over great distances with extended and vulnerable lines of communication. Unconstrained by doctrine approaches, the logistics plan set out to develop the concept of operations facilitated by smaller staffs, less lift, and occupying the smallest possible footprint that could still support large-scale operations. The division's CG made it clear that he would accept risk to ensure the maintenance of a rapid operational tempo, and units would operate at times with less than 3 days' supply of food, fuel, and ammunition. Now I get it. I see where that planning came from, because I can tell you there were days that we were short-handed in supplies, and that's why it was actually planned, and I had no idea that it was planned that way. So there we go. I just learned something new. Marines followed in support would at times have to fight their way up to resupply the division's combat trains, handling enemy raids and ambushes in the rear area themselves. The desired end state was a light, lean, lethal organization for combat that could fight and win on the logistic light diet. The division looked internally and made the first of many changes by altering the size and composition of the G4 staff. Composed of 120 sailors, including the medical section, the G4's Logistic Operations Center, or the LOC, occupied several tents full of space and several trucks full of lift. Division logisticians assess staff function by how they impacted current operations, command, and controlled at the division's main CP. If a function supported a division's maneuver element, G4 mobilized it and included it in the main CP, but left other functions of the division's support area. Watch standards would have specific technical or commodity expertise, but also have the capacity to function as MACTAB officers. Working in logistics functional areas adjacent to their own specialty, this approach reduced the main LOC staff of 31 multifunctional Marines and sailors, responsible for logistics operations, movement, control, and medical operations. Using reach-back capabilities, the complementing functions of supply, this also included ammunition, maintenance, management, food, service, mobility, and embarkation could set up at a key nodes to effect liaison with supporting agencies and push sustain forward. As a result of this reorganization, the LOC was small enough to be physically incorporated into the tentage of the main CP, and was able to provide integrated decision-making information to the CG, while maintaining full situational awareness of current and future requirements. Anticipating future requirements, defining ways to meet them before they became a problem would prove critical to the division's swift attack to Baghdad. Similarly, creative initiatives originated across the division. The commanders of the 3rd Assault Amphibious Battalion, Lieutenant Colonel Rob Abbott, anticipated the repair parts for amphibious assault vehicles, or AAVs, that had not received system upgrades. Those embarked aboard MPF ships would not have the mature Class 9 assets available to the Marine Corps supply system. As the remaining fleet of older AAVs went through these upgrades, serviceable parts removed from upgraded AAVs were retained and provided to the battalion. These parts were subsequently categorized and prepared for embark in support of the division's AAV on MPF shipping. The result was a high state of AAV readiness throughout the fight, in increasing the efficiency of the logistic support of the division. The staff was careful to ensure that they did not sacrifice effectiveness. The confidence of the commander and their units in the logistics system was paramount. In one instance, several key leaders of the Marine Corps expressed concern over the lack of training allowances for the Javelin weapon system. The Ordnance Readiness Section sought and received approval to conduct a live fire of the weapons system in the benchmark of the weapon's advertised performance. The round missed. They obtained a second round, fired it, and recorded another miss. This raised several questions regarding the issue of break glass in case of war type weapons. Working in concert with the Microsyscom, division logisticians and operations developed the solution set to improve the weapon system performance and bolster crew and commander confidence. The effectiveness of those solutions set would be seen when the division deployed to theater and began rehearsals for combat. So as we can see, things are slowly starting to fall into place. Now the division is starting to get ready. The new plan was set aside for reconnaissance, and all the different types of equipment that were on the MPF ships are starting to get the upgrades that a lot of those systems did not have. So next week, we're going to go ahead and continue and talk about the new concept for combat service support and how important that part of the mission is going to be to ensure that those combat units that are fighting in the front lines receive all the support that they need. The quarterdeck. If you're just joining us, you're listening to the quarterdeck. We just finished discussing VA benefits, and we read our chapter on our book, No Better Friend, No Worst Enemy. The days are going by so fast throughout this week, and can you guys believe it? We're already in a new month. Here we are in August already, and time is flying. Quick reminder that the podcast is now available on all podcasting applications. So just do a Google search for us, the Quarterdeck with Gunny Signs, and you will be able to find us on all the different platforms. Thank you guys very much for sharing, for going to our Facebook page, the Quarterdeck with Gunny Signs, sending in your comments, typing in some questions. It is greatly appreciated, and thank you guys so much for joining us here on this episode this week, and stand by for the continuation next week regarding on how to actually apply for disability compensation. Until then, this is the Gunny sounding Liberty Call.
Get out the bus!
I do solemnly swear. That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic.